Hello, it's John Heaton, and this afternoon I thought I'd rank, pretty sure I haven't done this before, rank McCartney and Wings 1970s standalone singles. So I think I had a go at B-sides recently, but today I'm going to just focus on the A-sides. I'm not going to take into account how strong the B-side or how weak the B-side was, just looking at the A-sides. I've got 10 singles here. I'm not counting tracks which were subsequently released on an album, just what I call standalone singles, which weren't on the album of the time, or it may have been released on the CD version later, but on the vinyl version they were not on it, on the following album. So I count them as standalone singles. There's 10 of them. I don't dislike any of these tracks, so don't be too disappointed if your favourite is near the bottom of my list. I had to, by definition, I have to put something bottom, and some of it is governed by how, if I've overheard a track over the years, it may not be as high as it should be. Certain tracks from McCartney's repertoire tend to get an awful lot of live versions by him and play on the radio, and you kind of hear them to death, so that kind of takes the edge off one's enjoyment of certain tracks. But I've tried to not let that colour this too much. So let's get down to it. Number 10, I've got Hi Hi Hi. I don't have this in a picture sleeve. I'm not sure if it came out as a picture sleeve in the UK, maybe in some European countries. It's an okay song. I think Karen Tyler described it as an inoffensive rocker. It was done quite successfully on the Wings of America tour and the earlier 73 UK tour. It's okay. Lyrically, it's well, we all know what it's about, drugs and groupies and stuff. It's quite fun, but it's just not my favourite song. Never has been. So then I've got number 9, Helen Wheels, which I know in the US was on the Band on the Run album, but in the UK, the one I grew up with, it wasn't, and I don't think it really fits along with the other material on Band on the Run, so I'm glad they left it off. But having said that, it's never been a particular favourite of mine. It's quite a nice rocker, quite an interesting video with Denny, Linda and Paul driving in the car down the motorway. Reasonably interesting lyrics, nothing special, nothing awful. Then we've got Junior's Farm at number 8, another quite well thought of rocker by critics and stuff. Just never really done it for me. I know this was the short-lived lineup with Jeff Britton on drums and Jimmy McCulloch's debut. Does a nice guitar solo near the beginning of the song, and it starts off pretty well. This song, the lyrics are a bit silly. This is the quite interesting, what would have been a picture sleeve. I think this was the sheet music. This is the sheet music, and I think posters were around at the time advertising the single, but I've never seen this Junior's Farm in a UK picture sleeve again. Maybe in some European countries, or maybe some you guys can tell me if it was in a picture sleeve where you live. Haven't found one myself. So that was number 8. Number 7, I've got Wonderful Christmas Time from 1979, which I remember at the time not liking this track at all, and obviously the critics murdered it. Karen Tyler murdered it, but I think hindsight displays its charms. I think it's quite a catchy song. In fact, it's very catchy, and it's played every year in, year out on the radio every Christmas. So I think it's a slightly cleverer song than people gave him credit for at the time. It effortlessly made number 6, I think it was, in the charts, and maybe prompted Paul to go solo, because Wings were not to record another album after this single came out, although they were in the video. Number 6, I've got Give Ireland Back to the Irish, the Wings' first single from February 72, with Henry McCulloch joining the band on lead guitar, and Denny Sewell and Denny Lane and Linda and Paul. And the reason this track is so high is because I think it's not been overplayed over the years, and it's still quite fresh, and It's only just recently been included in the those archive releases we had recently. Wasn't available for a long time on vinyl. Although one could pick up singles. Again, I've seen this in a picture sleeve in not UK. I think it was in a Wildlife picture sleeve. The front cover of Wildlife with the picture of Paul was on one picture sleeve I saw of this. I'm pretty sure. So that was number 6. Number 5, Live and Let Die from 1973. Now this probably should be higher on the list. It is a superb song. It's easily the best Bond song of all of them. Just I've heard it to death. I mean, I've seen Paul 19 times live, and he's played it 19 times live, and it's always played. Guns N' Roses covered it. I think someone else might have covered it as well. But it's a very well constructed song and for the movie and for which it was intended, and nice use of strings. I think George Martin was belatedly credited with helping out on this track, although not at the time, interestingly. Lovely melody, lovely chords, a nice one to play on the piano actually. So that was Live and Let Die. Number 4, I've got Mary Had a Little Lamb from 72. Yes, it's based on a nursery rhyme, but again, very underplayed, this track, undiscovered, and it was a delight that it was included on the Red Rose Speedway archive, or sorry, was at the Wildlife archive just recently. It's got a lovely melody, and yeah, it's a kid's song, but so what? Paul does it well, and it's a very catchy tune and very nice chords. If you play this one on the piano, some of the chords are not that straightforward. You've got some funny, strange chords in there. So I got a soft spot for that song. It's not everyone's favourite, I know. That was number 4. Number 3, into the top 3 now. We've got Good Night Tonight from 79, which came out just ahead of Back to the Egg, a couple of months ahead of Back to the Egg, and sailed up to number 5 in the charts, which was nice considering the second and third singles from London Town had not been successful. Got to number 42 and 60, but this one rose to number 5. It's Paul doing his take on disco, and with a superb bass line from him, and very catchy, and a deserved hit single, and a good one for them to play in the discos. And a great video to go with this, and we're obviously awaiting that video and all the other videos from that era in the forthcoming archive version of Back to the Egg, if and when we see that. So that was number 3. Number 2, Mull of Kintyre from November 77, which got to number 1 for 9 consecutive weeks in the UK. The Other Side, Girls' School, was promoted as the A-side in the US, but the UK and most countries correctly decided that Mull of Kintyre was the commercial one, and it was a monster hit. It's some people say it's not authentic Scottish, but you know, Paul is not Scottish himself, but he'd owned a property for the previous 7 or 8 years up until when this record came out, and you know, it's a genuine love for Scotland, and there's nothing wrong with him putting out a Scottish song, and it's a charming video to go with it. They made 2 videos, if not 3. Yeah, I remember what it was. It was 2 proper promo videos, and then a third time they were on the Mike Yarwood show, which is a UK show, and they did that around Christmas time. So yeah, Mull of Kintyre, I'll defend it. Not everyone likes it. It is a fairly simple song, but then simple is not necessarily a bad thing in a song. In fact, some of the greatest songs of all time are extremely simple. And Paul rarely plays this song these days. Only when he goes to Scotland, I think he brings it out and plays it. But I think it should be regarded in his catalogue as one of the highlights of his entire post-Beatles career. So that was Mull of Kintyre. And then coming in at number 1, I've got Another Day, the first single from Paul and Linda in early 71. So there was nothing released on the Maybe I'm Amazed album. And this was released ahead of the Ram album and not included on the Ram. And it's a very strong song. I know Lennon knocked it, saying, you know, in his song How Do You Sleep, the only thing you've done was yesterday, and since you're gone, you're just another day. But John was wrong about this song. Carr and Tyler were wrong about this song. It stood the test of time. Paul started playing it live recently. It's got that, I think Thomas Calden, you said that around that first year after the Beatles split, there was a certain magic kind of left over from the Beatles, which one felt in the solo efforts of the four Beatles, and I would count this song in there as well, because it was recorded in the fall of 1970 in New York City, and it sounds very Beatley, and it's got a very prominent McCartney-ish bass line, which is just a highlight of the song, and the harmonies from Linda are great. The tune is one to die for, and I just think it's a truly great single, and it was on Wings' Greatest. You know, as I say, not everyone's cup of tea, but it was number one on my list. Here's my ranking of the Paul McCartney and Wings singles from the 70s. Thank you for watching. See you next time.